The world feels a bit toxic and blah these days, doesn't it? The same old people coming up with the same old solutions for big problems that still don't work. We need to change the game. Well, welcome to Women Advancing. Join me, host Kate Byrne, in this dynamic bi-weekly podcast, bringing together female founders, funders, and thought leaders. Listen to the people driving change, how they got there, how you can help, and yep, how you might just be the next one to advance. Proof that all ships rise with women at the helm. That's what happens when Women Advance with Kate Byrne. Hey everyone, it's Kate Byrne, and welcome back to Women Advancing, where we get real about careers, choices, and the messy, beautiful business of moving forward. So picture this. We've all been here. You've built a career, maybe even a couple. You're juggling teams, you're juggling life, the kids, ambitions, and then you ask yourself, hold up, is this it? Am I even doing this right? Well, our guest today has asked those very same questions, and not just for herself, but for millions of people around the world. Suzy Welch is a renowned author, leadership expert, journalist, reinvention champion, extraordinary teacher, and she's got a true talent for cutting through the noise and helping us find clarity in all of that chaos that we're surrounded by. From her game-changing 10-10-10 decision-making method to her new series, Becoming You, she provides true, sharp insights on leadership, life, and what really matters. She's helped leaders, she's helped founders, she's helped regular people off the street rethink their paths with a little more courage and a lot more honesty, giving them the power to say no, and more importantly, yes to those things that make the most sense to them. Today, we talk about everything from ditching outdated leadership advice to how AI is shaking up decision-making. Is it? To finding work-life integration. Or does that even exist? Because this is Women Advancing, we're going to close with real-world advice that you can put to work as soon as you start your day. Looking forward to hearing what you think about this one. And remember, stay to the end because you'll hear KB's takeaways. Let's dive in. Hey, Suzy Welch. Welcome to Women Advancing. And for those of you who don't know who Suzy Welch is, she's not only a New York Stern professor, she's the director of the NYU Initiative on Purpose and Flourishing, 3-time New York Times bestseller. One is the self-discovery method, Becoming You. We'll talk about that. That's soon to come out with a book soon. More on that soon. And the 10-10-10, which is a values-based decision tool. So, Suzy, welcome. I'll stop.
Hi. Hello. I'm delighted to be here on your fabulous podcast. Thank you for having me, Kate.
That's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. I love to sing your praises on so many levels. So let's just hop right on in, because clearly you are an underachiever.
Yeah.
I haven't even mentioned some of the other little things that Suzy's got up her sleeve. You have had this incredible career, and it's spanned from journalism to leadership, business strategy, and now academia. What was like the biggest turning point in this whole professional career that got you to where you are right now?
Oh, there are just so many turning points. It's all turning points. It's all reinvention. I am old, which means I've reinvented myself many times. And I don't know. I mean, there are some careers where you don't have to do that. Like, say, for instance, you go into law, corporate law, you just build and build and build, and you get in that lane and
Right.
You can stay there. For most other careers in this day and age, because of technology and because we grow and change, our careers grow and change. And so I see the absolute logic to my ziggy zaggy career. I totally see the logic to it, but I have continually reinvented. Why? Because I was a newspaper journalist and the newspapers went away. I was a consultant and then I found it didn't exactly fit my values and one of my values being my 4 children who are at home wondering where I was all the time. And I became an entrepreneur quite by accident. I was sort of called in like saying, hey, we need a grown up in the room. And I ended up doing that. And then, and then events came into play and I lost my husband very sadly after a long illness. And when I came out the other side of that, I was like, well, what's next? And serendipitously or not, a friend right at that moment started teaching at Stern and said, well, basically I heard about him teaching and I thought, well, maybe that is the way to put all these threads together into a beautiful tapestry. And it worked. So there was no one turning moment. I mean, I don't think I'm alone in saying every day is kind of a turning point.
Right, exactly. I was actually thinking while you were talking is literally you have embodied just saying yes to what showed up, and you had complete sort of faith and trust in yourself, and you just did what you needed to do. So what is your best advice, though, for those who kind of find themselves stuck and
Okay.
they are looking to reinvent themselves or pivot. Is this where 10-10-10 could come in?
Well, 10-10-10 is a great decision making tool, but you can't use it unless you know your values. So I think you should start with becoming you. I mean, obviously, I'm very biased on this, but I would say that if you're stuck, something is broken. And I'm going to say that having seen a lot of people who are in career stalls or who think they might be going into a stall or who are just feeling really frustrated, you may still be accelerating, but saying maybe I'm going in the wrong direction, is you have to stand still for a brief moment and paint a self portrait, because until you know who you are, you have no legitimate way of knowing what you should do next. It's such common sense. And yet I myself am a case in point of just running very fast and sort of willy nilly saying, oops, yep, right, wrong, and so forth. But they're becoming use a methodology that helps you paint this self portrait of yourself by saying, okay, let's get down and dirty. What are your values? Which we never know. What are your aptitudes, which we rarely know? And what are your economically viable interests, which we usually know way too little about? And so the first step is to find out, just to unpack that. And at the center of those, at the intersection of those three things, your values, your aptitudes, so your values, what you truly believe,
Right.
your wants, needs, and motivations, your aptitudes, what you're uniquely good at, what you're wired to do cognitively and emotionally, and your economically viable interests. At the intersection of those three spheres is your purpose. Okay. It's not
Right.
just what you want to do. It's not just what you're good at. It's just not what interests you. It's at the intersection of those three. That's very hard work to figure that out. But man, is it worth it? It's so worth it because that's what you're meant to do. So you have to do that work. And so if you're stuck, there's no easy out. There's a hard out. And the hard out is figuring out what lies at the intersection of those three spheres. And that's hard. That's hard. That's why there's a method. I mean, I wouldn't have invented a methodology to do that if you could just sit in your living room and figure it out with a piece of paper. You can't, unfortunately. But that's what we usually do. We go out to dinner with a close friend and we think we're going to sort it out over a bottle of wine, if only, if only.
Well, yeah, and what you're also making me think about too is that because of those different things, those will shift too in time. So,
Your aptitudes won't.
yeah, okay, so your aptitudes won't true.
They won't. They're set by age 15. Your values are pretty steady state also, okay, to tell you the truth. People think, oh, my values change. No, values I think are pretty, I'm going to soon have longitudinal research on this. I don't have it quite yet. I need more time to pass, but I think our values are pretty stable. We suppress them more in certain periods of our life because we got kids or we got something going on. And our interests do change. I mean, our interests because we're introduced to something new, like, ooh, AI is very interesting to me. And that just didn't exist before. But our values and aptitudes, they can evolve, but less than people say or think.
So people would really get such a huge, I mean, I'm just thinking if I had done that, what a huge head start
Yes.
that would have been,
That's
right?
why I invented it. The first beta tester of becoming you was me because I was desperate. I mean,
Right.
I was like, desperate women do desperate things. And I was like, I got to get away out of here.
It also gives you such permission to say no.
Yes, it does. Look, I
We
mean, you
never
can't see
do.
this.
We
You
never do.
can't see this, Kate, but it's hanging on my computer is a sticker that says, hello, my name is no. Because I am able to say no all the time now. And I say yes a lot. Okay, I'm a yes girl, but I say no a lot now because I think it's just absolutely not my values, aptitudes, or interests. I mean, I got asked to do a very big job, a very high profile job, and I was immediately able to say no because I thought this absolutely is no overlap with my aptitudes.
Which
And
is
so it was very empowering.
amazing. So I want to ask then, and sort of taking a shift over now to kind of looking at some of the folks that you've worked with, and you've worked
Yeah.
with a bunch of different leaders. What is the biggest mistake that leaders make now when they're managing teams? And so
Oh,
it's
I mean,
faster.
I teach a whole class on that. My management
Yeah.
class is basically, I say that the biggest mistake leaders make is that they don't have a theory of leadership or what kind of leader they're going to be. And so they kind of reinvent what leadership is every day and they reinvent what kind of leader they're going to be. You have to have a theory. You have to have an operating theory about what you're supposed to do. I mean, I teach my students this and I myself have 7 principles of practice. Like I know what I think leaders do. I don't actually call them leaders in class because I think there's a lot of BS around the difference between leaders and managers. And I actually think it's a very blended role. If you're a leader who only has vision and talks from the top of the mountain, eventually everyone hates you because you've never
Right.
operationalized a single idea. And if you're a manager who's a grunty little executor who never thinks big, everyone hates you. And so I call it a Lanager, which puts together the words leader and manager, sort of like, Benifer.
Yes.
So I made up this word, and my students use the word Lanager because I tell them they have to. And I use that word because I think it's a very blended role. And so sometimes you're on the mountaintop and sometimes you're operationalizing, and you do both every single day when you're truly running an organization. So my students come out of the class with with their own personal principles of practice, which is this is what I believe to be true. And you can have I have 130 students in that class, and there's 130 different sets of principles of practice you got to have so that each day you don't show up as a different manager. And you got to, so for instance, one of mine is that one of the main roles of a Lanager, so to speak, is that you've got to tell the drummer what the words of the song mean. In other words, your job is to make meaning, to explain why people are doing the work they're doing. And sometimes I think, oh, gee, have I done that enough? But I know that that's part of my job. And so the biggest mistake that too many leaders make, to answer your question at long last, is that they are completely in default mode. They're completely in react mode. It comes at them and then they just react in the moment, and they just say, it's been crazy, it's busy, things are out of control. And that's fine. It's always going to be that way. But you got to go in proactively with a set of principles of practice and a sense of who you are and what you do and what your job actually is, and try to live more by design, try to manage more by design and not just default.
Well, and also in this day and age too, I think you have to share the mic a little bit. So I love the notion of the manager, because part of it too is you can also take from leading in the field to leading on the bench, right? So at least my dad always said, sis, if you're going to be a great leader, you need to at some point also have been a follower,
Yeah.
so that you have a little bit more empathy and probably respect, really, because no shock, I always had a little bit of an authority issue. And so people really, you know what I mean, the leaders have to earn my respect a lot. I see that a lot increasing with the incoming generations into the workplace.
They definitely, I mean, it's definitely a different. My next week, I'm teaching a class on managing Gen Z because my Gen Xers asked me to, because they have a different attitude about authority and they don't think it has to be earned. And they just think that there's no reason why their point of view isn't as good as the leader who's had sort of 30 years of experience. It's quite the moment, isn't it?
It is. And now you've got all six or five, well, maybe I guess it's five generations in the
Five
work.
generations are in the workplace at one time. It's absolutely true. It's
Yeah, which
absolutely
is crazy. So now I want to tap a little bit into, okay, so here you are, you're a leader, la la la, you're doing your thing. And now, speaking of react versus respond, and you talked about it, AI. How is AI changing leadership and decision making?
Well, it's changing decision
Is
making
it?
because everybody just puts the question to AI and asks it. And I don't know if that's a bad thing or not. I think that people generally don't have decision making systems. I teach decision making and I advocate that my students have at least two decision making systems that they use. And so they put the decision in and then they get the opinion and they can agree or disagree with it. But at least AI is not going to tell you my gut feeling is X, because gut is sort of right 50% of the time. At least that's what the research would show. And so I think AI is helpful in making decisions, in that you have another person in the room that you ask, but that happens to be a robot, but it's a robot that's got a lot of collective experience. And then I think, I don't know, it changes leadership. We're not sure yet how it changes leadership. I think that you've got another tool for analysis. You've got another tool for input. It changes education, I think, more than it changes leadership, actually, because, with education, like I literally go through my homework assignment saying, well, no, they'll just put that into AI and I'd like them to use their brains. Let me think of putting that question a different way, and so forth. But I think the jury's out on how it changes leadership. I mean, at the end of the day, if you think leadership is about, for instance, in my case, helping people make meaning of their work and see it as part of the larger picture, well, AI doesn't change a thing about that. I still have to do that. That's still on me. If you think leadership is about determining which outcomes have the highest ROI, well, AI is going to be a big pal to you because it's going to do some analysis for you.
So now we've talked a little bit about, becoming you and sort of searching and finding out your values and such. We've talked about the different generations and say Gen Z. One of the things that we were just talking about the other day was this desire, almost manic focus on out the gate, getting work-life balance and work-life integration. And the age-old work-life balance question of, is there such a thing? I still remember when we were at Fast Company, we even made it a cover, and work-life balance is bunk. Where do you stand on that fence?
Well, I think it's weird because balance presumes that there's a 50-50 split. And I think it's really personal what your balance is. Like for me, my work life quote unquote balance is 99% work, 1% life. That's just who I am. That's how I'm wired, and those are my values. Somebody else's might be the exact opposite. So I think I don't like the term work-life balance as much as like work-life choices, is that you decide what your values are. And I mean, I have a tool and where you can actually find out what your values are, because nobody really knows what their values are. It's 100 questions and it ranks your values for you from 1 to 15. And I think that once you know what your values are, you can talk about what your work-life choices are. Like I value self-care and private time and belonging, meaning sort of friendship, a huge amount in my life. And so therefore my work-life quote unquote balance is, 80-20. But there are consequences. The thing about it is that the reason why there's fights about this or tension or controversy around it is that there's a group of people who believe, look, we should have this balance 50-50 and there'd be no consequences. But as long as there's people who think that it can be 90-10 towards work, there's going to be consequences because they're going to have more opportunities. And if you've ever run a business, you understand why the people who put work first get more opportunities. It's like, oh, you've decided that work is not important to you. Let me give you opportunities. It just doesn't work that way. And I'm not sure it should as a business owner myself. So it's a controversial topic and you don't want to really bring it up at a dinner party.
No, exactly. Not if you want to be invited back. But I will
Right.
say, I can remember the way I always was sort of taught early days, even at Business Week, it was almost like front burner, back burner. And there were times when family was front burner and work was back burner, and then we
Yeah.
swapped. And that
Yeah.
was okay, and everybody understood it. And I think really what it gets down to is, and you just said it, what works for you? And you really have to know what works for you. And then you have to be okay with
Yeah.
that not being okay with everybody else,
That's
right?
right. But we need to be able to talk about it openly, sort of say, look,
Yes.
here are my values. Right now, my top value is family centrism. My life organizing principle is my family. And I understand that there's going to be consequences to that. Like my son was recently passed over for a promotion because he's made it very clear to his company that family is his number one value and being at home for his kids is his number one value. And he didn't get the promotion that he wanted, but he was really at peace with it. He had to be. He had to say, okay, they gave it to somebody who's, it was a management role. They gave it to somebody for whom being at the office was the number one priority. You can't be mad about it because there's consequences.
When I can even remember when I finally got the title of CEO, I did it for a bit and I realized, oh my God, this is not at all what I want. I really like my freedom. I like to do what I want to do when I want to do it with
That's
whom,
right. That's right.
right? And
Right.
so that was a huge eye opener. And again, if I had done the Becoming You, I would have known that.
You would have known it and you would have been more at peace with it. I mean, I had a student in class the other day who said, how can I be CEO and have work-life balance? And maybe your generation will be the generation where that actually happens. Maybe it will be you guys, and I power to you. But in the current way the world works, as long as there's a stock market and as long as there's publicly traded companies, that's not how it goes. And I got a lot of blank stares back at me because they don't like that answer. And maybe when I was young, I didn't like it either. Although I think I was sort of more with it in terms of understanding that's just the way the cookie crumbled.
Exactly. And that was just kind of how it had to be.
Right.
So then when people are trying to make those decisions, or a helpful tool would be 10-10-10. So can you just unpack that a bit? Because I think
Yeah.
I like it just because it goes across life, all of it, life, work, you name it.
10 to 10 is a decision making process because which I invented in 2007 because I was frustrated by making decisions on gut all the time. And I was not living very intentionally, to put it mildly. And my world just kept on. I was a full-time working mom with 4 children, and everything just kept on blowing up in my face because I was just zigging and zagging and living by default, as I've described. So I came up with a decision-making system that I really thought was just for me. I mean, little did I know that it would go on and sell a million books and so forth. I had no idea when I came up with this idea in a desperate moment, Kate, when
Yeah.
things were really down. And I
I
basically said, I'm going to take each decision I've got and I'm going to look at all of the options that it has. Okay. Because every decision has several options, at least 2 options, right? Otherwise, it wouldn't be a decision.
Right.
And I'm going to take each one of those options and I'm going to consider the consequences in 10 minutes. That's the immediate future. 10 months, that's the foreseeable future. I mean, it could be like 5 minutes and 5 months, but whatever. It's the immediate future, the foreseeable future. And then 10 years, that represents the life you want to create. And you basically grok that data. You just put all that data down on a piece of paper. You can do it in your head, but I have a chart that I do it with. And then you compare that to your values. Now, that's why I said you really can't do, sadly, you can't do 10, 10, 10 until you have your values. That's why I like the Becoming You methodology first, because if nothing else, I mean, Becoming You is designed to help you figure out what you should do with your life. But maybe you already know, but at the very least, Becoming You gives you a firm list of what your values are in the rank order. So once you know your values and you've done the 10 10 10 decision making process, you really can take ownership of your life. I mean, it is a process. They are 1-2 punch that I like a lot.
Right, which is amazing. I've used it and it's really proven incredibly valuable. And
Thank you.
again, it's another thing that gives you permission to say no for those of us who
It
are
does.
likely
No.
to be pleasers
Yeah.
or say yes. And the truth is, even if you are strong and independent and driving and all of that, you still can be a pleaser. You can still have,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
right?
Right. But you'll know that if you do Becoming You, because we do the temperament test. And so Enneagram. And so you'll know if you're a pleaser. And
Yeah.
so, the more you know about yourself, the more you can keep yourself out of trouble.
Yeah, no, so true. So I know you've all, from day one, you probably ran out of the womb, ready to go, ready for action, all sorts of different ideas. I always call this, if you could give yourself advice, like knowing what you know now, what would you actually tell your younger self?
Okay. So I want to correct that I came running out of the room, which was I was actually quite a docile child and my
Were
reputation.
you?
Yes, and I had a very intense Italian family, and I was very quiet. I think I was observing. My mother used to call me the little stupid one.
Oh,
She always says it was very affectionate. It was very affectionate. I was like, please explain to me how that's affectionate. I internalized it a little bit, but then pretty luckily in high school, I got a lot of confirmation that I had a brain in my head, which was very nice of teachers to tell me, and I was off to the races. I was not a very deliberate person. That's why it's so exquisite that this is where I found myself in my work, is that the greatest beneficiary of everything I've ever done would have been me in my early days. And so I think there's hope for all of us. I guess I think that's one way of saying it. I think that this knowing yourself is actually a very important first step to everything. And take the time to candidly, almost painfully candidly, figure out who you are in terms of your values, which is what you truly believe and want, your motivations, values. That's a very hard thing. And my research would suggest that 17% of all adults know what their values are. So don't, be in that 17%. Know what your aptitudes are, know what kind of work you should do and shouldn't do based on what your wiring is, and open up your aperture about what your interests are. And you got to do that work. So that's what I would say. I would say stop, do the work, know who you are so you can say yes to some things and no to other things.
why are people so hesitant to do that work? Is it just because it's so darn hard?
It's hard. They don't know the
And it's
tools.
scary, maybe, right?
Maybe because you don't want to say something out loud that you've been suspecting, like
Yeah.
that you don't want to work, or you want to work more, or that you don't really care about your friends. You'd rather do X, Y, and Z. I mean, I think that there's a lot of expectations around us. There's a lot of expedience. I also think that people don't know the tools exist. They exist. And had I known, if somebody had said to me, here's a process you can go through. I mean, I teach Becoming You in 1 day and in 3 days in my open enrollment classes. If somebody said to me, there's a 3 day process that's going to save you years and years of stupid detours, I would have taken it. I just didn't know it existed.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
maybe it didn't then, but it does now.
Well, and so where do you see the greatest opportunity for women as a result of this? If once you know your values, you've got your little decision tree, where do you see the greatest opportunity for women advancing and moving forward?
Taking ownership of what they want and what they can do, and actually having a language to explain it to other people. I think that part of what goes on is it's in our head and we don't say, okay. I mean, one of the reasons I like teaching Becoming You is one thing it does give people is a language to go out, a narrative to go out and say, okay, I've decided to do this. Here's the reasoning. My values are X, my aptitudes are Y, my interests are Z, and therefore this is my purpose. And to give yourself permission to make your case to the world. And I think that's what's exciting to me.
No, I completely agree. So Suzy, in closing, where can people find? I know the book's coming out May
Yep.
6th.
May 6th, the book comes out. You can pre-order it right now. If
And
you're
where?
this before May 6th, you pre-order it. It's everywhere. You can go to my website. The button's right there. You can go to Amazon. It's there. It's anywhere you go. And I have a podcast like you, Kate, and it's
Yep.
every single week. You can find it on Spotify. And I've got a newsletter, which you can sign up for on my website, SuzyWelch.com. And then I teach Becoming You. I teach it in 1 day and 3 days. I teach it on the NYU campus. It is in person. We don't have an online version of it, but we love people coming to that. And I teach it to a couple hundred people a month.
Which is awesome. So everyone listening, there's absolutely no excuse. There are
Yeah,
so
no,
many
I
entry
got
points So jump, learn, do it now because you're going to be so glad that you do. Well, Susie, thank you so much. I really appreciate your
I
time
thank
and your
you, Kate.
wisdom.
I thank you for what you're doing for women and what you're doing with your life and what an example and role model you are to all of us, me included. So thank you.
Stop, stop, stop. All right. Until next time, I so look forward to continuing the conversation. I got to tell you, it is always amazing to me to sit across the way from someone like a Suzy Welch who has done so much with her life. And I mean it when I said I didn't even begin to discuss all the other things she's got going on. My three key takeaways are wow, the alchemy of the ability of taking kind of the cards you were dealt when you've got a parent who refers to you as the little stupid one, and so far from the truth, and how taking that and actually turning that into, and all the different twists and turns and difficulties, ups and downs and lows and belows, and then turning around and creating two great frameworks that can help others so that they can actually not have to waste time. Because what are you going to do with this one wild and precious life, in the words of poet Mary Oliver? I'll tell you what, Susie's done a lot. So the alchemy of taking that which you've handled and turning what might seemingly seem difficult into an extraordinary positive. Second, there's choices. Work-life balance, work-life choice is really true. I think that's a much more apt description of what one goes through. And knowing what works for you and just knowing that that's you and that's what's going to work for you, and not having to explain it to everybody, and being okay if others don't understand it. And then finally, lastly, which probably I should have put first, is do the work. Take the time to get to know you. And then I would say go back and revisit it when you feel those big pivot moments occurring to you. Because by doing so, you're going to understand how you're wired, what your values are, what your aptitudes are, and hence that'll lead you to your purpose. Which again, for me, and maybe it's just because I do have a tendency to say yes too much, being able to give yourself the permission to say no, and perhaps more importantly, the permission to say yes, which really resonates with you. So many more. Susie's book is coming out. I'm really excited to see it. You can go and pre-order SuzyWelch.com and sign up for her class and download some of these wonderful tools that she has. Look forward to continuing our conversations with more amazing women on Women Advancing. See you next time.
Thanks for listening. May this episode inspire you to move forward. Be sure to go to iTunes, Spotify, katebyrne.co, that's KATEBYRNE.co, or wherever you listen to your podcasts, and listen to even more episodes. Here's to strong women. May we know them, may we be them, may we raise them. And be sure to meet them on the next Women Advancing. Ta till next time.